Part 1 _ Alcatraz, the rock's unbreakable reputation. In the first part of The Great Escape, America's most dangerous prison breaks, we delve into the legendary history of Alcatraz, also known as The Rock. Situated on an isolated island in the San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz gained a reputation as an impenetrable fortress, housing some of the nation's most notorious criminals. We begin by exploring the origins of Alcatraz as a military fortress and its transformation into a federal prison in 1934. Known for its harsh conditions and strict discipline, Alcatraz became the ultimate destination for the worst of the worst in the American penal system. Within the walls of Alcatraz, we encounter the stories of some of its most infamous inmates, such as Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and Robert Stroud, also known as the Birdman of Alcatraz. We delve into the psychological impact of the isolation and confinement experienced by these inmates, as well as the strategies employed by the prison authorities to maintain control. However, Alcatraz's formidable reputation was challenged by the audacity of those who dared to escape its clutches. We examine the remarkable 1946 Battle of Alcatraz, where a group of prisoners initiated a violent uprising in a desperate bid for freedom. While the revolt was ultimately quelled, it highlighted the desperation and determination of inmates facing life on the island. But the most famous escape attempt from Alcatraz occurred in 1962. 3 inmates, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, meticulously planned their escape for months. Using homemade tools and dummy heads to deceive the guards during nightly counts, they managed to slip through the prison's ventilation system and make their way to the water's edge. Despite an extensive manhunt and ongoing speculation, their fate remains unknown to this day. We also explore the aftermath of the escape attempts, including the tightening of security measures and the eventual closure of Alcatraz as a federal prison in 1963. Today, Alcatraz stands as a popular tourist destination, a testament to its enduring legacy as an unyielding fortress and the site of some of America's most daring escape attempts. In this first part of The Great Escape, America's most dangerous prison breaks, we uncover the mystique surrounding Alcatraz and the indelible mark it left on the American prison system. From its notorious inmates to the audacious escape attempts, Alcatraz remains an iconic symbol of the human desire for freedom and the enduring allure of the impossible escape. To maintain control over the inmates and uphold the reputation of Alcatraz as an impenetrable prison, the authorities employed various strategies. Here are some of the key measures implemented. 1. High security infrastructure. Alcatraz was designed with security as the top priority. The prison boasted thick concrete walls, gun galleries, and strategically placed guard towers. The rugged island location itself served as a natural barrier, surrounded by treacherous waters that were believed to be impossible to swim across. 2. Armed guards. Alcatraz had a high ratio of guards to inmates, ensuring constant surveillance and deterrence. Armed guards patrolled the cell blocks, corridors, and perimeter, ready to respond to any signs of unrest or escape attempts. 3. Strict discipline and rules. Inmates at Alcatraz were subjected to a strict code of conduct. They were required to follow a set of rules and regulations, with severe consequences for any violations. The prison authorities enforced a zero-tolerance policy for disobedience, ensuring that inmates understood the consequences of challenging their authority. 4. Isolation and confinement. Alcatraz was designed to isolate inmates from the outside world. The strictest form of isolation was the placement of inmates in solitary confinement cells, known as the hole. Inmates were confined to these windowless cells for extended periods, with limited contact with other prisoners, exacerbating their psychological stress and discouraging escape attempts. 5. Constant surveillance. Alcatraz employed a sophisticated surveillance system. Guards monitored the cell blocks, common areas, and outdoor spaces through a network of strategically placed cameras and observation points. Inmates were aware that they were under constant watch, making it difficult for them to plan and execute escape attempts without detection. 6. Regular head counts and inspections. The prison authorities conducted frequent head counts to ensure that all inmates were present and accounted for. These head counts were done multiple times a day and during the night, making it challenging for inmates to escape undetected. In addition, regular inspections of cells and personal belongings were conducted to search for contraband or any signs of escape planning. 7. Limited privileges. Inmates at Alcatraz had very few privileges compared to other prisons. They had limited access to recreational activities, educational programs, and contact with the outside world. By restricting privileges, the authorities aimed to minimize opportunities for communication and cooperation among inmates, reducing the likelihood of coordinated escape attempts. These strategies, combined with the prison's remote location and reputation for harsh conditions, were intended to deter inmates from attempting to escape Alcatraz. While some inmates did challenge these formidable obstacles, the authorities' vigilance and security measures largely succeeded in maintaining control over the prison population. Certainly. Here are some additional details about the strategies employed by the prison authorities at Alcatraz to maintain control. 1. Guard towers and armed patrols. Alcatraz had strategically positioned guard towers with armed guards who had a clear line of sight over the entire prison grounds. The armed patrols were a constant presence, both inside the cell blocks and around the perimeter of the prison. This heightened security presence acted as a deterrent to potential escapees and reinforced the notion that any escape attempt would be met with immediate and forceful resistance. 2. Cell design and placement. The design of the prison cells at Alcatraz was also aimed at minimizing opportunities for escape. Each cell had solid steel doors with limited openings for ventilation. The cells were arranged in a tiered fashion, with higher tiers overlooking the lower ones, making it challenging for inmates to communicate or coordinate escape plans without being noticed by guards or fellow inmates. 3. Control of communication. Alcatraz authorities tightly controlled inmate communication to prevent the exchange of information related to escape plans. Inmates were prohibited from speaking to each other during certain times, and conversations were monitored closely. In addition, mail sent and received by inmates was subject to strict scrutiny to prevent the transmission of coded messages or escape schematics. 4. Search procedures. The prison authorities conducted thorough and frequent searches of both inmates and their living quarters. Inmates were subjected to body searches, and their cells were inspected for contraband regularly. This stringent search protocol aimed to uncover any hidden tools, weapons, or escape paraphernalia that could be used in an escape attempt. 5. Staff training and readiness. The prison staff at Alcatraz received specialized training to handle the unique challenges posed by the facility. They were trained in techniques to detect and prevent escape attempts, as well as how to respond swiftly and effectively in case of emergencies. This training emphasized the importance of maintaining constant vigilance and staying alert to any signs of inmate unrest or escape planning. 6. Informant network. Alcatraz authorities made use of informants within the inmate population to gather intelligence on potential escape plans or other illicit activities. In exchange for cooperation, these informants often received certain privileges or leniency. This tactic helped to disrupt escape plots and maintain control over the prison environment. The combination of these strategies created an atmosphere of strict discipline, constant surveillance, and limited opportunities for inmates to plan and execute escapes. Despite these measures, Alcatraz did witness notable escape attempts, which only added to the prison's mystique and reputation as one of America's most formidable institutions. Several notable escape attempts took place at Alcatraz during its time as a federal prison. While most attempts were unsuccessful, they captured the public's imagination and contributed to the prison's reputation as an impenetrable fortress. Here are some of the most notable escape attempts. 1. The 1937 escape. Joseph Bowers and Theodore Cole attempted to escape Alcatraz in 1937. They managed to scale a wall and reach the fence surrounding the prison yard. However, as they were about to climb down using a makeshift rope, a guard spotted them. Both inmates were shot and killed before they could make their escape. 2. The 1946 Battle of Alcatraz. This was one of the most violent escape attempts in Alcatraz's history. Inmates Bernard Coy, Marvin Hubbard, Joseph Kretzer, Sam Shockley, Moran Thompson, and Clarence Carnes initiated a revolt in May 1946. They managed to overpower several guards and obtain weapons. Over the course of 2 days, a fierce battle ensued between the inmates and authorities. Ultimately, the revolt was suppressed, and 3 inmates, Coy, Hubbard, and Kretzer, were killed, while 2 others, Shockley and Thompson, were captured. 3. The 1962 Alcatraz escape. Perhaps the most famous escape attempt from Alcatraz involved Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin. In June 1962, they executed an elaborate plan to escape the island prison. Using homemade tools, they chiseled away at the ventilation grates in their cells, creating access to a utility corridor behind the walls. From there, they climbed through the ventilation system and reached the roof. They then descended to the ground level and inflated a raft made from raincoats to float away from the island. Despite an extensive manhunt and investigations, no trace of the escapees was ever found, and their fate remains unknown. 4. The 1963 escape attempt. A year after the infamous 1962 escape, John Paul Scott, Darrell Parker, and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, who had returned to Alcatraz, attempted another escape. They utilized a makeshift raft and life jackets made from raincoats. However, their raft was discovered on Angel Island, and the escape attempt failed. All 4 inmates were apprehended and returned to Alcatraz. 3. The 1962 Alcatraz escape. Perhaps the most famous escape attempt from Alcatraz involved Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin. In June 1962, they executed an elaborate plan to escape the island prison. Using homemade tools, they chiseled away at the ventilation grates in their cells, creating access to a utility corridor behind the walls. From there, they climbed through the ventilation system and reached the roof. They then descended to the ground level and inflated a raft made from raincoats to float away from the island. Despite an extensive manhunt and investigations, no trace of the escapees was ever found, and their fate remains unknown. 4. The 1963 escape attempt. A year after the infamous 1962 escape, John Paul Scott, Darrell Parker, and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, who had returned to Alcatraz, attempted another escape. They utilized a makeshift raft and life jackets made from raincoats. However, their raft was discovered on Angel Island, and the escape attempt failed. All 4 inmates were apprehended and returned to Alcatraz. These escape attempts demonstrated the resourcefulness and determination of inmates at Alcatraz, pushing the limits of the prison's security measures. While the majority of attempts were unsuccessful, they added to the allure and mystique of the prison, cementing its reputation as an institution that housed some of the nation's most desperate and audacious criminals.